Most people assume one thing when buying a car, especially an expensive one: it must be safe. But that's not always true. Even some luxury and top-selling models have performed poorly in recent crash tests. These tests focused on truck collisions, known as underride crashes, which are far more dangerous than typical accidents and cause hundreds of deaths each year. And when these cars were put through that scenario, the results were shocking. Number 13. Mercedes G-Wagon. Let's start with the Mercedes G-Class, the G-Wagon. It looks like a tank. Celebrities love it. People assume it's built like a fortress that can handle anything on the road. But in the test, it didn't live up to that image at all. In a relatively simple rear-end collision with a truck, the front of the vehicle collapsed much more than expected. The hood crumpled instantly, the windshield shattered, and the force of the impact pushed dangerously close to the passenger area. It wasn't some extreme high-speed crash either. This is the kind of situation that can happen in normal traffic. The biggest issue? There wasn't enough protection to stop the car from sliding under the truck. And that's the reality. Just because something looks strong doesn't mean it actually is. Design matters more than appearance. Number 12. Lexus RX 350. The Lexus RX 350 is one of those cars people trust without even thinking twice. It's smooth, comfortable, and has a strong reputation for reliability. But here's what most people don't realize. In crash testing, the front seats were well protected, but the back seats? Not so much. Rear passengers experienced higher injury risks, mainly because the safety systems in the back just weren't as advanced as those in the front. The seatbelt didn't hold the dummy properly, and there wasn't enough airbag coverage to reduce the impact. That's worrying, especially for families, because kids usually sit in the back. You assume the whole car is equally safe, but in this case, that assumption doesn't fully hold up. Number 11. Volvo S60. If you ask anyone to name the safest car brand, Volvo will probably come up instantly. So when the S60 showed weaknesses in testing, it caught people off guard. The front structure held up decently, which is what you'd expect, but the issue was again with rear passengers. The roof deformed more than expected, and the seatbelt didn't tighten quickly enough to keep the occupant in place. That caused the head to move forward more than it should. That delay might sound small, but in a crash, milliseconds matter. And that's what makes this concerning. People don't buy Volvo just for style, they buy it because they trust it with their safety. Number 10. Maybach S480. Now this one is interesting. The Maybach S480 is basically peak luxury. It's built for comfort, especially for passengers sitting in the back. Everything about it says premium, from the materials to the ride quality. But in testing, the rear seat safety didn't match those expectations at all. There were issues with airbag deployment, and parts of the structure pushed into the passenger space during impact. Meanwhile, the front seats performed much better, which creates a strange imbalance. And that's the problem. If a car is designed to be chauffeur-driven, the safest place should be the back seat, not the front. Number 9. BMW X5. The BMW X5 is marketed as the do-it-all SUV. Fast, luxurious, and practical for families. But in crash tests, the structure didn't hold up as well as you'd expect from a vehicle in this price range. There was noticeable intrusion into the cabin, meaning parts of the car actually pushed inward during the crash. That's exactly what you don't want, because it reduces the space protecting the occupants. Rear passengers also weren't fully protected due to delayed seatbelt response, which allowed too much forward movement during impact. Again, these sound like small technical issues, but in real life, they can make a big difference. Number 8. Mercedes GLC. Another Mercedes on the list, and again, not great results. The GLC showed structural weaknesses, especially in the roof and side areas. During impact, parts of the body deformed more than expected, and the rear cabin didn't stay as stable as it should. Airbags also didn't perform as effectively as they should have, which reduces their ability to absorb force and protect passengers. For a car that's often marketed as a family-friendly luxury SUV, that's not exactly reassuring. It's one of those cases where expectations are high, but the results don't fully match. Number 7. Range Rover. Prestige over protection? The Range Rover has a strong presence. It feels solid, powerful, and premium the moment you sit inside. But in these crash tests, it struggled, especially in high-impact situations. The roof structure collapsed more than expected, and airbag performance wasn't consistent across different scenarios. That combination increases the risk of serious injuries, especially in more severe crashes. There's also the issue of its high center of gravity, which can increase rollover risk depending on the situation. So while it feels safe when you drive it, the actual data tells a more complicated story. Number 6. Ford Expedition. A lot of people think bigger vehicles are automatically safer. The Ford Expedition proves that's not always true. In testing, the structural frame didn't hold together properly under impact. The A-pillars, basically the supports that keep the cabin intact, showed serious weakness. When that happens, the survival space inside the car starts to disappear. And once that space is compromised, the risk of serious injury increases significantly. So yes, it's big, but that alone doesn't guarantee protection. Number 5. Chevrolet Tahoe. The Tahoe had a really unusual issue. One side of the vehicle performed noticeably better than the other. The driver's side held up reasonably well, but the passenger side experienced more intrusion into the cabin. That means the level of safety depends on where you're sitting. And honestly, that shouldn't happen in a modern SUV. Safety should be consistent across the entire vehicle, not something that changes based on position. Number 4. Nissan Rogue. The Rogue had problems in crash testing, particularly with structural deformation and inconsistent airbag performance. But what makes it more concerning are additional issues that have been reported, like unintended acceleration and braking inconsistencies. Individually, these might not seem like a huge deal, but when you combine them with weaker crash performance, it starts to paint a bigger picture. And that picture raises serious questions about overall reliability and safety. Number 3. Jeep Grand Cherokee. The Grand Cherokee looks tough. It's built for off-road use, which naturally gives people confidence. But crash tests showed that it doesn't always perform well in real-world collisions. There were issues with airbag timing and structural integrity, which could increase the risk of injury during impact. It's a reminder of something important. Off-road capability and crash safety are two completely different things. Number 2. Honda CR-V. The CR-V is one of the most trusted SUVs out there, so seeing it struggle in certain crash scenarios was honestly surprising. There were issues with structural integrity in specific types of impacts, and rear passenger protection wasn't as strong as expected. That's especially concerning for families, since rear seats are usually occupied by children. It doesn't mean the car is unsafe overall, but it does mean it's not perfect. And that's something buyers should be aware of. Number 1. Toyota RAV4. The RAV4 is everywhere. It's reliable, practical, and one of the best-selling vehicles for a reason. But recent crash tests showed some weaknesses, particularly for rear passengers. The structure held up fairly well overall, but the positioning of airbags didn't fully prevent head movement during impact. That increases the risk of injury in certain situations. It's not a terrible result, but it's also not as strong as many people expect from a car with such a solid reputation. And that's the key point. Even the most popular cars aren't perfect. And that's the part most people never see. The difference between what a car promises and what it actually does when it matters most. So before you trust the badge, the price, or the hype, make sure you're trusting the data. If you want to be smarter every day, like and subscribe.